All right, welcome back, my friends, to the show that ends eventually because we have to. I'm Glenn Brockenbush. Welcome back to Spoken Freely. It is your sports podcast for anything and everything sports in the great state of Oklahoma. And it is playoff time officially here in the Sooner State. High school football playoffs start this week. And as usual, the big boys are going to be some of the big talking points. And in Class 6A-1, you have a lot of teams that seem capable of possibly knocking on the door and knocking off Jenks this year. But because it's one of the few, in fact, the only classification in Oklahoma that does not have a team in the Lawton area, it's probably the classification that I know the least about. And that's why I brought in somebody who knows quite a bit about the Tulsa area and about football in Class 6A-1. And he is the voice of the Broken Arrow Tigers, but also you may know him as Mr. March Madness. He is the voice of your Sweet 16 participants, the Golden Eagles of Oral Roberts. It is Adam Hildebrandt, and he joins us now. Adam, thanks so much for doing this, pal. I do appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we got to catch up for a little while. We've known each other for quite some time now. We're getting old. We've known each other for over 10 years now.
Over a decade. Yeah. Back when we were just
it was good to
wide-eyed pups at sports media camp, age 18.
That's right.
Didn't even go to college yet.
It was good to catch up a little bit and now talk some football.
Absolutely. And this is your first year, I believe, doing the Broken Arrow games on ArrowVision. Is that correct?
It's my second, but last year was the pandemic year, so that one doesn't count anyway.
That's fair. ArrowVision is the media hub for all things for Broken Arrow Public Schools, and so you can watch their games streaming online on their YouTube page as well. And Adam, Broken Arrow is a program that obviously a couple of years ago broke through and won a state title, and ever since then has been a program that is been producing really good players and really good teams. And this is, as I mentioned at the top, Jenks is the defending state champ, and they are a program that has been number one for most of the season. But after them, it feels like it's just a bottleneck in terms of teams that could be playing for that state title. And lo and behold, 3/4 of them all happen to be on the same side of the bracket. And it starts with Broken Arrow playing against the team that I believe I picked at the beginning of the dang season to win the whole dang thing is Owasso. So it's just so ridiculous how crowded and how talented, and not just the Tulsa area is, but even teams like Mustang, Santa Fe, and UConn have been this season.
Yeah, and there's been some close games. Ironically, Owasso, Broken Arrow in the regular season was not one of them. Owasso pretty much dominated that game from start to finish, but Broken Arrow has changed some things up with its offense. They had a lot of weapons and perhaps just weren't putting them all. They hadn't fit the puzzle pieces together quite right to get all those weapons to work in cohesion early on in the season. So now with Sterling Ramsey moving to quarterback, Griffin Stevers starting at tight end again, and they figured some things out on the offensive end, and the defense has actually been fairly solid all year, but it's gotten better and better, especially since that Owasso game. But we thought at the beginning of the year that Union might be the best team in the state. Union has a pretty unique combination of size up front and then also speed and weapons on the outside. But Jenks shut him out, beat him 22-0 at Tuttle Stadium, if I remember correctly. And so, Jenks from that point on has kind of been the front runner, and they're really good, as you might expect a Jenks Trojan football team to be. They got a sophomore quarterback who can really sling the football around. They've got size, both on the offensive and the defensive end in the trenches. So it's going to be tough to unseat Jenks. And the scary thing, frankly, is that everybody's, competing and looking to win the 6A-1 title this year, and at the same time simultaneously looking over their shoulders and thinking, there's a pretty good Bixby football team that's going to be moving up to 6A1 next year, and they are immediately going to be title contenders. Now, they lose a lot this year after this season. They got some very talented seniors that are going to be graduating, but I don't think that Spartan team is going anywhere anytime soon. So it's a bit of an odd time to be in 6A1 right now.
You bring that up. I honestly kind of forgot about that. Bixby leaves 6A2 and goes up to 6A1, and they've beaten teams like Union and Jenks over the past couple of years. I mean, they have proven that they are pound for pound the best team in the entire state, basically. That's interesting that you bring up kind of the sophomore quarterback at Jenks, because last year that was kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people were picking them, was because they had Kittleman, who was a senior quarterback and had the experience, and yet they that's a program that obviously even after Alan Trimble left has just continued to mow down opponents. And like you said, that 22-0 win over Union, I think, opened up a lot of eyes too, because I mean, that's arguably the top rivalry in the state, but B, that's, like you said, it's not a bad Union team whatsoever. It's a really good Union team, and they took it to them. The Tigers start off, they get Owasso, and that's an Owasso team that I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to watch them. I know they're not in Broken Arrow's district, but they're not far from you, and they the Rams have a tough running attack, and then also it just so helps that over the offseason they got arguably the best defensive player in the state to move in, and Chris McClellan, who came over from Edison. What do you see from the Rams that could give Broken Arrow some trouble in that first round game?
I mean, they've got some guys at skill positions that are younger, but have been playing together for a long time. I think both they've got a quarterback and a wide receiver, who I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, who are both juniors now. I believe they were sophomores last year. And the wide receiver, even going back to his freshman year, came into the game and made a big play against Broken Arrow on a reverse that broke the game open in favor of Owasso. And so they've got a very cohesive skill group that is filled with guys who started making an impact at a younger age than most at the 6A1 level. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys come in, certainly as freshmen, but really even as sophomores at that level and make big impacts. And those guys have been. Owasso does not have the size that they had last year. They were huge up front offensively last year. I mean, they had, I think, 4 guys that were over 300 pounds on the offensive line last year. They graduated everybody. This was a brand new offensive line this year, and they gelled in a hurry and were able to really come together. That was the question mark, to be frank, of this offense early on. I talked to Bill Blankenship before the BA Owasso game, and he said, hey, we know what we've got at wide receiver, at running back, and quarterback. The offensive line is the question mark, and that became a strong point very quickly for Owasso. So if they may have as good a chance as anybody to upset Jenks, and then they also dropped a game to Mustang that people didn't necessarily expect to drop. So it's far from a complete team, but it's certainly a team with a lot of talent.
Yeah, Mustang is a team that, again, if you just like looking at prospects and just like looking at recruiting sites, I mean, Jacoby Johnson, Andre Dollard, they've got dudes at Mustang. This is probably one of the most talented football teams Mustang has ever had. And I go back to my time when we were in college, and I helped out with Pioneer Media and helped out when Stillwater would play Mustang, and this was right on the heels of David Glidden coming out of there. And they still were running a spread offense when not a lot of teams were running quite that kind of spread. I mean, it was very Texas Tech of them. I don't know if it's just because of the black and red uniforms, but it felt very much like watching a Texas Tech game. That's you consider what Broken Arrow has been through. When you brought up Blankenship's name, I was thinking about that. I mean, this is a Broken Arrow team that you think about the coaching position and everything that has gone on, because David Alexander no longer the head coach, correct? And then that happens, and it just I think a lot of people were kind of shocked by that, and to see how they've responded this season, it appears that things have been going pretty smoothly still.
Yeah, I mean, not not that I was particularly familiar with the inner workings of Broken Arrow Athletics when I started calling games a year ago, but it did surprise me. I mean, David Alexander was what 2 years removed from winning Broken Arrow's only state championship. So
Yeah.
that did surprise me a little bit. But then you go and hire Josh Blankenship. So obviously you got the name recognition. He's a guy who's coached at the college level. I mean, he came from Adam State, and he knows what it takes to be successful at quarterback. And so I think those are all good things that have allowed him to be successful. He's an awesome dude. It was like week 3. We were filming the Inside Tiger Football Coaches Show, and he had to leave immediately afterwards to drive to Colorado to adopt 3 kids and then drive back.
Wow.
Because they had started that process when he was working at Adam State in Colorado. And so I've enjoyed being around him, and the players that I've talked to all seem to really like playing for him. Britt Mon is the defensive coordinator who's done a really nice job this year. This defense, most of these guys are on their 3rd defensive coordinator in the last 3 years. Some of them, like Javion Franklin, who transferred in from Memphis between his freshman and sophomore year. He's on his 4th defensive coordinator in 4 years, and they are playing well as a unit and cohesively. One thing that's going to be tough for BA down the stretch is they lost Dietrich Moore a couple weeks ago, and he was their do everything middle linebacker. I mean, he'd be calling out things to his fellow defenders and then making tackles on 3rd down, and then he'd back up and catch the punt on 4th down. So, like, when you lose that kind of an athlete in the middle of your defense, it's a problem. They've actually taken it about as well as I think they could have. So they're going to need to lean on that defense a little more if they're going to defeat Owasso and advance in the postseason. But it's a group that's been fun to be around. I get to talk to some of the players individually since we have a player come and do Inside Tiger Football with us for a segment every week. So I've gotten a fair amount of access considering I took the job during a pandemic. But it's been fun to see kind of the transition this year and see this team, really get better. You hear coaches all the time say, we want to get better on a weekly basis. This is a Broken Arrow team that has 100% done that. They beat up on a Mansfield Legacy team at the beginning of the year that frankly was not that great. And then they hit a real roadblock against Union and Owasso the next 2 weeks and took a couple losses and frankly got beat. I mean, the Owasso game, which is the 3rd game of the year, they got whooped. And it was, under a new coach, taking a beating like that, you could see where a team might lay down and not react very well. And this team did the opposite. They reacted very well, and they have continued to get better on a weekly basis and put themselves in a position where round 2 against Owasso, I have a feeling will look very different. Am I saying guaranteeing Broken Arrow is going to come out and win this game? No, I am not. But it's going to be a heck of a lot more competitive than it was at Owasso in week 3.
Yeah, sometimes we as media folk have to remind people that when we say something, we're not guaranteeing anything. Like, don't take us at our word. We're just media folk. We barely count as humans. But
I'm a football idiot. Please do not understand anything that I say to be Bible, but by any stretch of the imagination.
I think it's funny when people will say, like, Glenn, did you why should we trust this guy? Did he ever play football? And I'm like, I didn't. So maybe they have a point. I'm looking at the bracket and, Owasso versus Broken Arrow in the quarterfinals. On the same side of the bracket, you got Union and UConn. The other side, Jenks versus Norman North, Mustang versus Edmond Santa Fe. I'm going to put you on the spot, Mr. Hildebrandt. Who wins the Division I, Class A Division I title?
Oof.
You'll keep your job. Don't worry. You don't have to say.
Probably Jenks. But there's a lot of parity in this group.
That's why I find it so fascinating, because I think that this is going to be one of the hardest brackets to predict. Even though there's only 8 teams, I think you can make a case. I mean, look, Norman North, UConn, they're fine. I doubt they're going to win, the title. All the other 6 other teams, you could absolutely convince me.
Yeah, I would say whoever comes out of that opposite side of BA, Union, Owasso, stands a better chance because they don't have quite as tough a road to get there.
Yeah.
Do not sleep on Santa Fe.
Mm.
They don't have the depth that some of the other teams have on the east side of the state, and they don't have the size up front that some of the east side teams have. But that talent at the skill positions offensively can catch anyone on any night. And it does not, this is high school football. There are times that a team, I mean, you saw it with Owasso in the state championship game. Owasso was the best team in the state last year. Yeah. There's not a doubt in my mind. But they had a bad night in the state championship game, and it got them.
Yeah.
Anybody can have a bad night. And if you have a bad night against Santa Fe, they have the talent to make you pay. I mean, that freshman running back that they got over there, it's one linebacker that misses a fit in a gap, and he's gone.
Wow.
So they have enough talent to get it done if they catch people on the right nights. And if that means they catch Jenks on a bad night and they force a couple uncharacteristic turnovers. I misspoke earlier, by the way. Jenks' freshman, quarterback is a freshman.
Wow.
But he makes a couple freshman mistakes and turns the ball over. Santa Fe could win that game. And then they could win a game against a BA or an Owasso who's beat up from defeating the other one and then defeating Union. Like there's some possibilities there. So I think it's a pretty open bracket. The way Broken Arrow's defense has played and the way the offense has been getting better on a weekly basis, I can see them winning it. Marion Horn, I didn't call the game last Friday because I had other obligations, but Marion Horn ran for more than 700 yards in a 3-week span. The dude can play.
Yeah.
And he is very capable of carrying this team to a state championship. So it will be a fun bracket to watch over the course of these next few weeks because there are some question marks in there for sure.
Yeah, I was driving home from a game a couple weeks ago and was flipping channels and happened to hear on a post game kind of like score roundup show. Hear them talking to none other than Mr. Hildebrandt, and heard you talking about trying to get cell phone reception in a parking lot, and I remember you talking about Talon Shetron and just how that dude can catch just about anything, and how you're like, no, this kid's the real deal. This is absolutely one of the best, if not the best receiver in the state. Depending on how you want to characterize, Braylon Presley. Braylon Presley, I guess, is technically a running back, even though he does everything for Bixby. But Shetron is definitely one of those players that we as media folk are lucky enough to usually have a press pass to get into games. But he's somebody I would absolutely pay cash money to see in person. And that there's a reason that they love him up in Stillwater. Before I let you go, I thought this was a pretty interesting little thing. We switched from the 6A bracket down to 3A because I thought this is a little neat bit of serendipity. Is down in the bottom left corner of that bracket. We mentioned earlier that we met at sports media camp at Oklahoma State in Stillwater in 2008. Your Lincoln Christian Bulldogs, one of the favorites to win Class 3A, they're having an excellent season again. They take on Veneta. They win that. They will take on either our Southwest Oklahoma's own Anadarko Warriors or our friend and also sports media camp alum Whit Carter of Squirtle, his Sulphur Bulldogs. So I was like, man, it's just it's all worlds colliding down in that southwest corner of the 3A bracket. But Lincoln Christian's a program that obviously does it year in and year out. And you can say what you want about public schools versus private schools in the 2A and 3A ranks. I know there's plenty of coaches I've talked to that have said, we got to do something. We've got to, have them have their own classification. Until that happens, you got to deal with them. You can't really, you can complain all you want. It's like complaining about August humidity. It's still going to happen. I don't know what to tell you, because Lincoln Christian, Heritage Hall, and Holland Hall are all probably, pretty high up on the list, if not the top 3 teams to beat in Class 3A. And so I don't know. I think it's an interesting, interesting case to be made. Maybe at some point we'll see that happen. I know coming from Texas, almost all of the private schools compete in their own division. And so, I mean, my high school would play some of the Fort Worth schools like during the season, but not during the playoffs. And it's just, I don't know. You're going to have issues either way, I feel like.
So we had, when I was in school at Lincoln, we actually were part of what was the OCSSA, Oklahoma Christian Secondary Schools Association, if I remember correctly. And so my senior year, I only played football my senior year because I was pipsqueak and scrawny, and I didn't want to get broken in half. But my senior year, we went 13-0. We played 12, 11-0. We played a full regular season, and then we played a bowl game against Christian Heritage out of Oklahoma City. And we ran roughshod over everybody, to be honest. My understanding is when they joined the OSSAA, I think the first year they might have played in 2A, but after that, they essentially, my understanding is that each student counts as 1.5. So Lincoln's playing up a class compared to what their actual class size is. But I do remember, if I remember correctly, because I think this game was at Sulphur, my freshman year of college, Lincoln was making its run to the state championship and had to play at Sulphur. And we went down to watch the game. And Wilson's his last name because I played with him. Cody was his brother. Clay was his younger brother. I'm having a tough time drawing his first name, but he had to kick a game-winning field goal from about 35 yards as time expired and made it. So I'm confident I probably text Whit about that at the time. He and I have actually, I think he is up here in the Tulsa area now because we corresponded about maybe a year or 2 years ago. But in any time that we were down there playing in that part of the country or that part of the state, I would text him and let him know. But yeah, I mean, there is, you know, we've talked a lot about 6A1 football tonight, and that's a fun atmosphere to be in. But it's a different atmosphere than some of those 2A and 3A places where
absolutely
the town still shuts down and comes down and watches. I mean,
100%.
when I was in my junior and senior year at OSU, I called the Lincoln games. I started my own broadcast and called those Lincoln games. And we went to Vian, and there were two things that happened. First of all, I thought my color analyst was going to get us in a fight because we were in the same room in the press box as the Vian radio guys. And they do, that town shuts down and they go watch football Friday nights. And excuse me, that they were hollering about a call that the official made, and we could hear him because we were right there next to him. And my color analyst, who is my friend, and we played football together at Lincoln, and we were in OSU together at the time. He waits just for the right moment, and it finally gets quiet, and he goes, "You know, I thought that was a pretty good call from the officials there." And I was like, "Oh, you have done it. We are going to get in a fight up here." We did not, fortunately, but Lincoln had a police escort out of town that night because you beat Vian in Vian, and there's
hell to pay, man. There's hell to pay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
I love that kind of atmosphere. Like it's hard
awesome
to beat that with high school football.
I recently, so the past 2 weeks, and I'm glad you brought this up because it gives me an excuse to talk about my favorite subjects, football and me. No, so 2 weeks ago, we kind of talked about this off the air, but my parents were in town visiting, and they were staying in Medicine Park, kind of a touristy area north of Lawton. And I told my dad, I said, "Hey, I don't know what you and Mom have going on, but I'm covering Cache versus Elgin. It's one of the bigger rivalries in our area. Neither team was having a great season record wise, but you know, it'd be fun if you wanted to come." And he's like, "Hell yeah, I'll go." And got him on the sidelines, you know, and I joked with my dad because I'm sure you're the same way. So whenever I got into sports media is, you know, you have family members that are sports fans that are like, you know, "You're going to get me free tickets. You're going to get me this." I told my dad, I turned around and I go, "Man, I might not ever be able to get you free Rose Bowl tickets, but I'll get you on the sideline at Cache Elgin. And that has some pull around here. I'll tell you what." And, you know, that was a neat atmosphere. And, you know, Elgin hadn't beaten Cache in like, I think 3 or 4, I think it had been since like 2016, something like that. And, you know, they end up winning and, you know, beat them pretty good. And the fans were, you know, there on both sides. They shot off fireworks, and it's a neat atmosphere. And then this past week, I got to go cover Frederick versus Davis. And, you know, Frederick needed to win basically to get into the playoffs, and they didn't get the win. But I mean, the atmosphere there in Frederick is nuts. It's the Bomber Bowl. They have a little bomber plane that a guy drives around in on the field. They're playing the Top Gun music as the team like comes through the smoke. It's pretty nuts, and it's just one of those things where you're right. I mean, small school football it's so neat. And I actually haven't gotten to cover a single game at Cameron Stadium for the Lawton Public Schools this year, and that kind of felt weird at first, but I'm kind of cool with it because I've gotten to see games at probably eight or nine different environments this season, and that it's really cool to see all these different towns and how they respond, to their teams and to their football. And I'm a Texas boy at heart. Texas high school football is always going to have a special place in my heart, but Oklahoma, man, they do it good here too. And it's a lot of fun to watch. And, we're excited for playoffs. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the next, 4 to 5 weeks. Adam, where can folks listen to find your broadcasts again for Broken Arrow and anything else that you want to plug?
Yeah, so it's arrowvision.tv. They stream it on Facebook and on YouTube, if I remember correctly. And it's a good group of folks that I work with over there. Greg Spitzer is the director. Love working with him. And then they get several students involved, running cameras and TD and some things like that. So it's a good time. I will actually not be on the call this Friday. I will have a fill-in because basketball season is upon us.
That's true.
So I will have Oral Roberts at home against I think it's Haskell Indian Nations Friday night. The first game is at Colorado State on Tuesday, so I've been more focused on that. But Glenn, you mentioned earlier you have Roku. You can now download the ORU Athletics or the ORU Sports Network on your Roku and go straight from the app and catch some ORU games. So that's the thing as well. But I told Steve Dunn, the athletic director at Broken Arrow, earlier that I was going to speak into existence that Broken Arrow was going to defeat Owasso and move into round 2, and that I would be able to jump back on the mic for the next one. So
there you go.
But yeah, it's arrowvision.tv if you want to catch what I think will be a really good game between a couple of teams who are going to have some guys playing at the next level next year. I mean, RJ Spears Jennings for BA is committed to OU. Marion Horn's committed to Texas Tech. Wouldn't surprise me if they land one more in there somewhere. And then I know Owasso's got some guys that are garnering attention as well. So it should be a fun one.
Absolutely. He is Adam Hildebrandt, the voice of the Broken Arrow Tigers. I am merely Glenn Brockenbush. Thank you guys so much for listening to spOKen Freely, and we will talk to you later.